As is well understood, no comparison, no harm. But not all comparisons have a bonus effect. Some comparisons are inappropriate. For example, 1,000 kilograms versus 1,000 kilometers. Which is bigger? Some comparisons are confusing. For example, a bat to the head versus a hammer to the head. Which is more painful? In many cases, comparisons are just relative. And the same applies to photography. A good comparison can bring out the subject, such as the 3 types of contrast in our previous tutorial video, while a bad comparison will not only fail to do so, but also cause visual distraction, which should be avoided by all means. In this video, bootleg shot will provide 3 types of contrast that should be avoided. Let's take a look.
Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on your little bell to get more information on the latest mobile photography for free.
In the previous video, we've talked about contrasting colors. Since most of the food we eat is of warm color, here we use a cool color background to create a contrast. The area that can be covered in a photo is very limited, and we have to allocate this area appropriately to show our hero effectively. Sometimes, because of the desire to get a good photo, we will try to capture everything as much as possible, and the best position in the photo to show the full look is the center. So we will pile up a lot of objects in the center of the picture and think that this is the correct center composition. Now let's take a look to see whether this is right. Even if all the objects in the photo are manually placed in the middle on purpose, the deliberate gathering of objects in the center doesn't look comfortable, though it's not like ordinary clutter. Moreover, as the objects in the center are too dense, it takes longer for the brain to recognize the amount of information, so you may put them all into one category, or simply ignore them. Therefore, the first type of contrast should be avoided. When being a surrounding object, it should play the exact role of a surrounding object, since the center is the area where the main subject is to be displayed. Other surrounding objects should not fall in this area, but move a little bit to other places, and not too close to it, so as to be an effective surrounding object. If you feel that the area around the main subject is empty and insecure without placing object, you can find some inconspicuous things to fill the empty space. Compared with just now, does the subject become more obvious? Another common situation is that, in order to make the distinction between the main subject and the surrounding object more obvious, it will be packed with vessels into piles and piles, like dividing the area. Take the pumpkins scattered here and there as an example. We place them all on the cutting board to frame the pumpkin area after the arrangement. Then take a photo. At first glance, nothing seems to be wrong, and the 3 areas are clearly delineated. But if you look closely, there's one detail that is often overlooked. The surrounding object, such as the pumpkin here, occupy an area which is almost as large as that of the main subject, and perhaps even larger than that. Since the main subject ought to be the pumpkin soup, all the other objects are only for supporting purposes, thus leaving the largest area for the main subject. In other words, the supporting characters only need to be a sidekick. Therefore, the second type of contrast should be avoided. We push the pumpkins and the toast around them a little bit outward, so that the main subject can be exposed more in the picture. But even if we push the surrounding object outward, they still take up a large proportion of the picture. Therefore, we should adjust the framing and lower the large distance a little bit to reduce unnecessary area outside and focus more on the subject. This time, let's take a new look. Compared with the previous one, is the subject more obvious? Check the current picture. Except for the pumpkin with the cutting board underneath, the rest are placed on a single layer. That is to say, the objects are just placed directly on the table. Although the pumpkin soup is more well cooked than the pumpkin next to it, there's not much difference in the layers of these 3 areas in general. Therefore, the third type of contrast should be avoided. Just like in the court dramas, the higher the status or the more favored by the emperor, the more elaborate the clothes or the decoration on the head will be. So does photography. In order to create a more obvious visual distinction, we can increase layers. For example, We can add other padding props to make the picture more layered and visually richer. We can also add some books, cutting boards, as well as fabrics under the main subject, thus enriching the picture. By the way, the main subject itself can also be decorated. So take a photo after it's set up. Compare with just now. The main subject is more obvious, isn't it?
Phone photography at home. Have you learned it? If you have any questions about taking pictures or arranging props, please leave us a message and we will make it into a tutorial video to reply. It's not hard to take pictures, just try it.